Chapter 1, Section 2, Operations with Real Numbers. So we'll review the order of operations again. Again, remember PEMDAS is just an acronym for order of operations. And the P stands for parentheses, but really it's all grouping symbols. E stands for your exponents. Multiplication and division is going to be done from left to right, and then addition and subtraction is also going to be done from left to right. So if we have 21 divided by negative 3 plus 7 times negative 2, we don't have any grouping symbols, we don't have any exponents, but what we have is division, multiplication, and addition in the same problem. So we're going to do the division and multiplication first, and then we will do the addition last. So the first thing we're going to do is 21 divided by negative 3. So 21 divided by negative 3 is going to be negative 7. And then we're also going to do this multiplication 7 times negative 2, which is going to be a negative 14. So in this section, what we're introducing basically is the positive and negative numbers. So just remember that when we write a negative number and it's embedded, I always use the parentheses just to signify that we do have a negative number. So now what we have is negative 7 and negative 14, which is going to be a negative 21. Alright, the next problem we have is dealing with decimals, so I am going to use the calculator with that. If this one, you'll notice that you have multiple sets of grouping symbols, so we're going to work inside out. So all of the beginning of the problem, 3.8 minus 4 times negative 2.7 times the 1 minus a negative 4 is the first thing that we're going to actually do. So 1 minus a negative 4, remember double negatives go to plus. So we have 1 plus 4, which is going to be 5. Now we can do what's inside those brackets. So we'll have, just bring down the negative 3.8 minus 4, still going to be times, and it's going to be times what we get when we multiply negative 2.7 times 5. And so we'll have a negative 13.5. Okay, so the only thing we have left now is subtraction and multiplication. And of course, order of operations tells me to do the multiplication first. So we'll have negative 3.8 minus whatever we're going to get when we multiply 4 times negative 13.5. which is going to be a negative 54. So now we have subtraction. We have negative 3.8 minus a negative 54, which I'm going to go ahead and say that this is addition. So we have a negative 3.8 plus 54, which is going to be 50.2. Alright, so on this page we have the top left, which is going to be multiplication and addition, but we have the addition in grouping symbols. So for those of you who are familiar with distributive property, if you want to do distributive property here, you can. It's not necessary though. What I would prefer to do is order of operations, which tells me to do the grouping symbols first. So we're going to do negative 12 times the negative 3 plus 20, which is going to be the 17. And then what we're going to do is the multiplication. So we'll have negative 12 times 17, which is going to be a negative 204. So then the problem on the right, if you'll notice, we have two sets of brackets. So what we need to do is we need to get those two sets of brackets down to one single number, and then we're going to multiply the number that we get for those two groups. I know that's multiplication because there's nothing in between those two brackets. So that means that we're going to get these two brackets again down to one number, and then we're going to multiply the two numbers that we get inside the brackets. So for example, the bracket in the left, on the left hand side, we have multiplication and subtraction. So let's do the multiplication first. So we have negative 10 minus 24. And we can go ahead and do this next bracket, 4 times negative 2, which is going to be negative 8, and 7 times 1 is going to be 7. So let's now, on the left side group, subtract these two. So we have negative 10 minus 24, which is going to be a negative 34. And then we have a negative 8 and a positive 7, which is going to give us a negative 1. Now the last step we're going to do is multiply these two numbers together, which is going to give us a positive 34. Okay, on the bottom, what we have is two separate groups, and we're going to add those two groups. So, for example, this is going to be a group plus this group. So what we're going to do is we're going to get this group down to one number, and then we're going to get this group down to one number, and then we're going to add the results. So on the left hand side we have negative 12 plus 20, which is going to be 8 divided by negative 4. 8 divided by negative 4 is going to be a negative 2, plus negative 7 and 11 is going to be a negative 18 divided by negative 9, which is going to be a positive 2, and then negative 2 and positive 2 will give us 0. Okay, now we're going to deal with fractions, and these two particular problems are somewhat tricky, but again, you have your calculators, so I strongly suggest that you use your calculators when dealing with fractions. So the problem on the left, what we have is 7 1/8 minus a group. So what we need to do is we need to get what's inside the group down to one number before we include this 7 1/8. So I'm just going to bring down the 7 1/8 minus whatever we get in this group. So in the calculator you can type in 2 1/4 minus 3 7/8, and you're going to come up with negative 1 5/8. And then, of course, you know that the double negatives go to plus, so I'm actually going to add 7 1/8 plus 1 5/8, which is going to be 8 3/4. And again, if you don't know how to do fractions in your calculator, bring your calculator into class and I'll show you how to do that. Now the problem on the right is somewhat tricky because of the way the fractions are set up, and what I need you to understand is this number here is a mixed number. This says negative 4 and or plus 1/2, so this is negative 4 1/2. This is a mixed number. However, these two numbers are not mixed numbers because they're indicating multiplication. This says 3 times 1/6, and this says negative 2 times negative 3/4. This is addition, negative 4 1/2. This is multiplication. So these are not mixed numbers. So according to order of operations, I don't have parentheses, I don't have exponents, so I don't have to worry about that. But my multiplication and division, I'm going to do first. So this negative 4 1/2 is just going to be left out for a minute. Minus, and we're going to multiply 3 times 1/6, and you can do that in your calculator, 3 times 1/6, and that's going to give you 1/2. Minus, and then we're going to do a negative 2 times a negative 3/4, and that's going to give you a positive 1 1/2, or you can write 3/2, however you want to write it, it doesn't matter. Alright, so now we took care of the multiplication. There was no division, and so now we can do addition and subtraction, which there's not any addition, it's just subtraction. So we can put all of this in our calculator, and so we'll have 4 1/2, and of course it's negative. Negative 4 1/2 minus 1/2 minus 1 1/2. And we'll get negative 6 1/2. So again, strongly suggest that you use your calculators. If not, you're going to have to go back and review how to deal with fractions, how to add, subtract, multiply fractions before you can master this. What I'd like for you to do is I would like you to complete these numbers on page 30 just for a little bit of practice, and if you need any help, look in your book, which is a great resource, or review this video again.